Has traditional fiqh prepared the ground for organizations like ISIS and Taliban? We need to use this sentence with care. A retired tutor used the same sentence at the Ankara University Theology Faculty meeting. He said, traditional fiqh gives birth to ISIS and Taliban-like structures. Was the tutor really right? Of course he was right. But some took offense and they said, what do you mean? All our jurisprudence does so? The tutor didn't mean that. What the tutor says is the law. Law is a living thing. So if you go to a law faculty today and wish to study property law or criminal law, but from a law book written 1,000 years ago, they will laugh at you. But unfortunately, when you say that we will study a book of fiqh, they refer to books of ijtihad, which were written 1,000 years ago and were shaped according to the problems of that period. You can't solve the problems of life with this approach. For example, let me give you a personification of this. Let me give you an example from a recent incident in which traditional fiqh gave birth to the Taliban and ISIS. What is the current issue of ISIS and the Taliban? It's the Khilafah. They declared the Caliphate 4 or 5 years ago and said, Istanbul is not conquered. We are going to conquer it. Istanbul is in the hands of the idolaters. They wrote about it in their magazines. They declared their caliphate. Look, the problem starts here. We generally say that these people were perverted. And what did a great jurist in Turkey or in the Islamic world say about this? I don't want to mention names. We have all the information and evidence available. They said, what ISIS does is not legitimate. It is not true. The caliphate cannot be declared as such. So how is it declared? The problem is that in classical fiqh, the caliph is the religious leader of the ummah, so to speak. It is perceived as a religious institution, so to speak. Of course, this kind of thinking gives birth to ISIS. ISIS came out and said, the Islamic world is leaderless. In that case, I am the leader, so come join my army. Many people from the world of Islam who do not use their reason joined ISIS and fought for them. But the strange thing is that fiqh scholars said this is not legitimate. In fact, such is the case. The Islamic world should come together and choose a caliph. And some of them will be subject to the caliph by giving up their right to govern. Nowhere in the world can such a state or such a government can be established. First of all, it is fancifulness, a utopian Islamism, a utopian caliphate. Therefore, this is an example on the matter of why fiqh gives birth to such movements. Other examples within our classic fiqh books relate to the topics of water, weddings, and so forth. As we all know, there's no problem in women's active participation in society today, while respecting moral values. Today, all Muslims accept this. But when you look at classical jurisprudence, there is an understanding that does not approve teaching women how to read and write. An understanding that women's socializing is, in a sense, a kind of prostitution. We have a sense of fiqh based on beating when a child does not pray. I'm sorry, none of this is in the Qur'an. So there's something wrong with fiqh. A case law may have been made under the circumstances of that period. This is natural. However, these conditions no longer exist in our society today. It is needed to make new ijtihad based on the Qur'an and Sunnah. But there's a problem in our understanding of Islam. We attribute ijtihad to Abu Hanifa, the most rational scholar, the most rational fiqh man, to Ibn Hanbal, Shafi'i, Imam Malik. Will no case law be made after them? We have an understanding that Islam is over with them. This is wrong. This is what we need to get rid of first. Consequently, Classical fiqh produces ISIS for these reasons. Otherwise, classical fiqh is case law. It has very detailed provisions. This is no different from the law taught in law faculties. If you interpret it from a wrong perspective, and you follow it such that all of it, as a whole, the good and the bad, cannot be argued anymore, of course, it gives birth to ISIS, because that will produce formalism, and so you cannot proceed with this approach.